you're watching The Spirit Journey, where we talk about entrepreneurship, spirituality, and lots of other interesting things. This video is going to be about the Almanak of Naval Ravikant and what I learned from the book. Firstly, I just want to say that I loved this book. If you are thinking about reading this book, 100% recommend. I would say it's in my top business books right now. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was really good. This book is just really good. It's very wise. It's very philosophical and wise. So if you need some inspiration, I think it's very accessible and will definitely motivate you to achieve more in your life. If you like content about entrepreneurship, business, and digital stuff, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. With that said, let's get into the video. Naval has a phrase, play long-term games with long-term people. I really like this phrase because I think a lot of entrepreneurs especially think really short-term. They think how can I be successful in the next 30 days, in the next 90 days, in the next year even. And the best things on earth take a really long time to build. Facebook has been the only thing that Mark Zuckerberg has worked on for more than 10 years. Jeff Bezos has worked on Amazon for maybe 20 years, maybe more. If you want to build something great, Steve Jobs launched a MacBook when he was in his 20s that failed, and then 10 or 20 years later launched a MacBook that was massively successful. And even after his death, Apple continues to grow in accordance with his legacy. So if you want to build something really important and special, then be patient and play the long-term game. So I thought this was really interesting and cool. Naval said when he was young, he set an hourly rate for himself of $5,000 per hour, which sounds astronomical, right? And then he said he would outsource things below that rate and basically aspire towards opportunities that would pay him that amount. And I feel like I've internalized this on my own in a different way. I've kind of understood that I want to have ownership and equity in whatever I'm pursuing. So working for a certain hourly rate is cool, but having stock or equity in a situation is cooler if you're expecting a good upside from your efforts. So definitely be aspirational with your hourly rate or with the amount of equity that you want to have in business ventures. Naval also talks about compound interest. So people like Warren Buffett understand that in investing, compound interest really adds up. So most, I think 80 or 90% of Warren Buffett's total wealth has been accumulated in the past 10 years. So over time, a 10% return on your investment annually will compound greatly. And Naval expands on this thesis to talk about relationships. And I really like that because I have a lot of old friends that go back to childhood. And I can say that my relationships with those people become deeper and more meaningful every year. And if you think about a husband and a wife that have been married 50 years, there's something beautiful about time and the depth that the nuance that you come to understand with another person. So whether it's business partners or romantic partners or friends, compound interest applies in relationships as well. Naval says something that I really like. He said, if you can't decide, the answer is no. So sometimes you think about a project and you think oh, that might be good for me. I might make this amount of money. This person needs my help. This person wants a favor from me. I don't want to do it. If you can't decide, just say no. And learn to say no if that's hard for you. And I've had to say no to things along the way, and I'm getting better at saying no and kind of valuing my time more. I think I used to be a little bit of a pushover and kind of say yes to a lot of stuff that undervalued me. So definitely prioritize yourself and value your time, and if you can't decide, say no. One thing I learned from this book is about leverage, and leverage is how much payback you're getting for your time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, and the people who make more money have more leverage in how they're using those hours. The most simple form of leverage is just having a higher hourly wage. So if you have a wage that's $100 per hour versus $10 an hour, you have more leverage than someone making $10 an hour because your time is more valuable. So the richest people in the world have a lot of financial leverage. So if you think about Warren Buffett, capital is something he uses for leverage. He raises money from investors, which he then invests into companies to get a return on that investment. But because he's raised billions and billions of dollars from people, he is able to make a huge percentage return on the capital invested because he's investing so much capital. And that's why Warren Buffett is one of the richest people on earth, because he has tons of leverage. So Naval Ravikant talks about the two oldest forms of leverage, which are capital, money, and people, labor. So if you have labor as a form of leverage, that means you have employees or people working for you, and your vision can be achieved at a greater rate or faster pace because you are working with others to move towards that goal. If you have capital working for you as a form of leverage, then let's say you get a 10% return on an investment annually. If you invest $10 in your investment, then you will get $1 back. If you invest $100 million, you will get $10 million back. So if you have more capital, you can make a lot more money if you make good investments. The other two forms of leverage that Naval talks about are code, software, and media, like videos. And these are permissionless forms of leverage, which means that anyone can employ them. So anybody with a computer can write code, anybody with a camera can make videos. So if you want to be a part of the new internet economy, then learn to code or learn to make good videos, because these are forms of leverage that can be scaled infinitely number of times with just, however long it took you to produce the first initial product. Naval also talks about specific knowledge, which he defines as stuff that you're interested in and which you can uniquely provide to society. So I make videos about entrepreneurship and cryptocurrency and design, and these are things that I'm uniquely interested in. I don't make videos about cake because I'm not uniquely qualified to talk about cake. I know about as much about cake as like anybody else. I really like this about Naval. He talks about your intellectual curiosity like being the foundation of what you pursue in your career, and that being the good foundation for a long-lasting and healthy career. You just simply won't be great at what you're doing unless you have an intellectual curiosity around the topic. And if you do have intellectual curiosity around what you're doing or studying or pursuing or whatever, you will learn every day. You'll learn, in your free time, and you'll eventually become really good and really valuable in the market. So he talks about following your unique curiosity and not doing something because it's trendy or just because you think it'll make you money, but because you're really interested in it. Naval talks about being able to sell and being able to build. And he says if you can do both, then you'll be unstoppable. So if you think about, there's a lot of YouTubers who are good at marketing. They're good at getting their message out there, but maybe they don't know how to code. And then there's some people, like when I was in college, a lot of my friends could code, but they didn't really know how to sell. And so it's kind of like, if you can build something and you can get people to care about it and buy it, then you'll be unstoppable. Naval also talks about freedom, and he talks about freedom being one of his core underlying values. He says that money can make a person more free, but it can also cause less freedom in a way, with fear of losing money and obligation if you're in a high position of power and things like that. And so just aspiring towards greater amounts of freedom is something that I definitely do, and I think that Naval really values in his life as well. Naval also talks about character, and he says that you can attract business opportunities to you simply by having great character and a reputation built around your character. So if you're an investor, for example, and you're investing in startups, people will bring you good investments. They will want to work with you. They will bring you good deals if they love who you are as a person and admire your character. He also talks about doing things that are bad character in the short term and might have a short-term gain, and how in the long term, even if you're the only one who knows, it'll still be bad because you'll know that you did it and you'll know that that's the kind of person that you are. And like for me, sometimes I take shortcuts. Like if I see something that looks really good online, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna copy that. Or like I take little short-term shortcuts in some ways. And I have stopped doing that since understanding this principle, because you should always interpret for yourself, and you should always take the path that exemplifies the best character, because that will in the long term bring you the best business. Naval Ravikant also talks about patience, which is something that Alex Hormozi talks about a lot too, which I think is really important. he says that you should be doing things for their own sake. So like if you're an artist or if you're an entrepreneur who's creating a software product, like if you're just doing it for money, or if you're really keeping track of your views and counts and followers and things like that, you'll run out of time, or you'll run out of steam, like you'll stop, you'll quit, because there's no underlying motivation or reason to do what you're doing. He says that if you have an underlying reason and motivation for doing something, you'll stick with it even when no one is watching or no one cares or you have no users, and you'll finally get to your destination because you had a good reason behind what you were pursuing. I personally really like this one. Naval talks about judgment being the most highly paid thing in the economy. So we think of coding and design as skills that are highly paid, and Naval says that if you have 10% better judgment on average than somebody else, that you can capitalize on that to any amount imaginable. Because like, let's say you're the CEO of a company and the company does $100 million a year in profit. If you have 10% better judgment than the other guy who was CEO, then you're gonna make $10 million more per year for that company if you have 10% better judgment. So judgment is the ultimate multiplier and the thing that is most highly rewarded in any economy. Naval talks about being a contrarian, and this is something that Peter Thiel also talks a lot about. Good entrepreneurs think for themselves a lot of the time, and that allows them to see opportunities in the market that other people are missing, or to take a risk that other people don't understand that might pay out a lot, just to think independently and to see industries that are maybe the status quo but aren't performing anymore and things like that. I think being contrarian can really hold value if you can apply it in the right way. So he talks about being a contrarian and kind of learning to think for yourself, which I think is something that I know how to do pretty well. And I think really art school helped me a lot with being more contrarian, because it was kind of a weird decision for a really high performing academic student to go to an art school. Kind of, it didn't make sense. Like I didn't do a lot of art in high school. I did a lot of studying. And so people were like, why are you going to art school? And I was like, because I want to learn to think like that. And so I think that that education really helped me learn to think for myself. Naval also talks a lot about reading, and he really stresses that readers become leaders and reading for reading's sake. And he said, read whatever you want at first, if it's romance novels or whatever, just find something you love to read and practice the skill of reading, and that will cultivate you engaging with other types of books in the future. I think I started loving reading when I started reading about entrepreneurship and business and philosophy. I didn't really like reading stories, and I still don't like reading stories that much, so find something that you like to read and keep reading. Finally, Naval talks about being who you are and being authentic. And he talks about never work for someone for a day who you wouldn't work with for life. Don't stay in a job for a day that you wouldn't stay in for life. And while these decisions can be really challenging, and you might be thinking practically that that's just not possible, kind of aspiring towards that value and really thinking like, would I do this for the rest of my life? And if no, then why am I doing this today? And if you can think like that, you'll probably get to a more authentic life in the long term. So just keep that in mind. Whew, that was a lot of learning. I hope you got something from this video. I hope you're gonna read the Almanak of Naval Ravikant, because I thought it was a great book and it really helped me and inspired me. Or just listen to it on Audible if you don't want to read it. But it's a great business read and life, happiness, philosophy book. So definitely pick up a copy. If you enjoy content like this and you want to see more videos about entrepreneurship and business, etc., subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. All right, peace.